I think the Dallas Renegades should do the Renegade every time they do anything, right? Do the anyway. Untuck It makes shirts specifically designed to be worn untucked. The casual shirt that's not too long and not too short. It's just right. Shirts designed so well, GQ calls them perfection. Use the promo code HERD for 20% off your entire first purchase, or visit one of Untuck It's over 80 retail locations across the country. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin. Joy Taylor alongside. She's headed to Vegas for the fight. Colin, I think, is going to be there as well. Should be a great, great weekend. Of course, you can get that on pay-per-view and watch it on your Fox Sports app, wherever you are, just right there on your whatever device you want. Stop me if you've heard this before, but Kyrie Irving is injured. Now, look, I never cheer for injury, ever, ever, ever. I am the guy that watches injuries over and over and over again on my phone or on any device because I'm that guy, right? I've said this before. There's three types of people in this world. There's types of people that I don't want to see it. There's types of people that say, type 2 is, I want to watch it once just so I can catalog it. And then there's type of people that, man, I can't believe that guy's leg broke in half. Let me watch that again. Let me call up my friends. Let me send it to my buddies. Let me make it into a meme. That's me. That's who I am. Kyrie's injury this time, not gruesome, not graphic, not Gordon Hayward breaking his leg so you could see the bone sticking out, not Paul George. Oh, my God, his leg scratched the floor at Thomas and Mack. You remember that? There was actually a scratch on the floor from the bone in his leg. It was awesome. It was amazing, let's be honest. Like, Paul George is fine. It's fine, okay? It's fine. And so I'm that guy. Sorry. So this isn't about his injury. It's the fact that he's always hurt. Like, Kyrie Irving is always hurt. He hurt his big toe when he was at Duke, right? He's hurt his shoulders. He had the knee. Even after he had the knee fixed, and he hurt the knee, remember, game one of their first NBA Finals. Then he comes back, and when he had the knee fixed, and it was in Boston, like, there's bad luck. He had the meshing that was in his knee, like, to keep the thing together because the kneecap had broken apart. That was irritating. And they took that out. Then he had, like, an infected screw. Like, the guy's got bad luck and just a body that breaks down. Oh, yeah, and there's his team's record is better when he's not playing. Oh, and as Joy pointed out, their culture was fun last year. And now it's sort of fun, but sort of like, we'll wait till next year we're more competitive. You know, remember, this is the same Kyrie Irving who earlier this year named 6 guys that they felt like were good enough to win with. And there are 15 guys in an NBA roster, right? He's like, well, I should have. No, you did what you always do, which is maybe you're too honest. Maybe you're too opinionated. Maybe you have too many thoughts in your mind. Whatever it is, Kyrie's a guy who, look, when he left Cleveland, and it was an awful trade. Like, Isaiah Thomas lasted for 5 minutes in Cleveland coming off, and he had the bad hip. But when they made that trade, you would have thought Cleveland would fall off almost like jumping off a bridge. And though their regular season record was worse without Kyrie Irving, who is a superstar talent. Like, don't let anybody tell you that Gottlieb told you, well, Kyrie can't play. No. He might be the most talented guard of all of them. He doesn't shoot as well as Lillard, but he's a way better finisher. He's a better passer than Damian Lillard. He's, again, not the shooter of Steph, and he doesn't always want to play defense, but when he wants to, he can. But sometimes he wants to guard the other team's best player. Like last year in Boston, if you watch them at times in the playoffs, even though it wasn't on the scouting report, he's trying to guard the other team's best player, and they're going by him. He leaves Cleveland, and though the regular season record isn't as good, they did go to the NBA Finals without him, did they not? He goes to Boston, and though everything was seemingly going well, he gets hurt, and they go to the Eastern Conference Finals without him. He comes back, and they're worse because of it. Now he goes to Brooklyn, where they had great culture. They're fun, energetic. Everybody liked what they were doing. Now it's like, and they're better without him. Then you factor in next year they're going to add Kevin Durant, who's going to be 31, coming off an Achilles tendon tear, who also is kind of like, all right, well, I've done the dominant ISO ball in Oklahoma City, but there wasn't enough space. When we had to share the ball at Golden State, there was space, and I was the best player on the planet. this is a different team. We have ball movement. I'm a ball stopper. Then so what does Durant look like off the Achilles tendon? What does Durant look like within how they play? What does Durant look like with Kyrie Irving, who he's never played an NBA regular season game with? And then you have Kyrie Irving, who struggles with how he wants to lead, but he's not really a good leader, and no one seems to be able to tell him, like, hey, you're not actually a good leader. And what happens if Brooklyn has some success, makes the playoffs, and does well without him again? Tell me there's something more interesting than watching the Brooklyn Nets, who were fun, play in a cool arena. They're kind of in the biggest market in the country, kind of. Like they're like the 7th most popular professional sports franchise in the tri-state area. And they have 2 of the most talented dudes to put on sneakers. And you have Kevin Durant, who keeps changing his story as to why he's done what he's done. And you got Kyrie Irving, who, if you don't think he knows everything, ask him, he'll tell you. Kevin Durant ain't giving up burner accounts, and Kyrie Irving ain't giving up trying to be a leader. I can't wait for him to get back next year. We're going to have to wait, but there is nothing more interesting than what's going on in Brooklyn for all the wrong reasons. Oh, yeah, and the right reason is they're, like, super talented. And I think Sean Marks from death's door has resurrected that franchise. But how does it end? What is the end game to it? Let's get you Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News. Sponsored by Liberty Mutual Insurance. Only pay for what you need.
The 49ers bounced back from a 4-12 season in 2018 to reach the Super Bowl in 2019. Incredible turnaround. And Bengals wide receiver John Ross thinks Cincinnati can do the same thing this year. He said, it's become the norm for the media to attack a team that doesn't do well. Once we start doing better, we'll flip the script just like the 49ers. 2 years ago, they won 4 games. Now they go play in a Super Bowl. That can be very much anyone's story. Just how hard you work in the offseason and how well the team comes together. We'll see where the next couple of months go. So a couple other Bengals players have come out. Joe Mixon said something yesterday, and it's kind of becoming a narrative that the media is attacking Cincinnati because the conversation is, should Joe Burrow ask to be traded and try to avoid going to Cincinnati as the number 1 overall pick in the draft, which, whatever your opinion about whether Burrow should do that or not is fine. I'm kind of indifferent to it because I've never been in a situation where I have to make a decision like that. I think if Burrow was, say, my brother, I would really look into what's going to happen in Cincinnati because I really think the only people that are going to be angry at Burrow for that is going to be people in Cincinnati. Everyone else might be a little critical of him. They might be watching to see where he goes and how well he does, but I don't think anyone would really blame him for not wanting to go to Cincinnati, which is kind of why I understand where John Ross is coming from defending his team, and I get it. But you can't compare the San Francisco 49ers to the Cincinnati Bengals on many, many levels. GM, owner, tradition, culture, the fact that they got Nick Bosa because Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt, which is the only reason why they were 4-12 to begin with. So that turnaround should have been assumed. It was obvious. Now, going to the Super Bowl is obviously very dramatic, but they're set up completely differently than the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not saying that I don't think Joe Burrow is going to have a good career in Cincinnati. I just don't think he's going to reach the full potential of what he's capable of. I'm much higher on Joe Burrow than most people, but I don't see a turnaround from 2-14 to the Super Bowl next year for Cincinnati.
No, I mean, look, it should be pointed out, the Niners were 2-14 4 years ago. 2-14. Jim Tomsula, who couldn't put together a full sentence, was their head coach. Right? And even before, we forget that before Jim Harbaugh took over, you go back to the early 2000s, and they would go through coach after coach after coach. Right? They had Dennis Erickson and Mike Nolan and Mike Singletary. Can't live with him. Can't do it. Can't, right? Like, and whereas the Bengals, it wasn't that long ago that they went to 5 straight playoff appearances.
So the Bengals aren't as dysfunctional. I don't want to say they're not dysfunctional,
the Bengals are unique.
They are not the Browns.
Well, yeah, there's parts of them which are more functional than the Browns and parts of them that are less functional. Here's what the Bengals are, okay? They've always been bargain basement bin shoppers. They've always You go back to Marvin Lewis. That team they were the Bungles before he got there because they had all these guys that were getting in trouble, Pac-Man Jones and late Chris Henry off the field. Okay? And then Marvin Jones came in, and he was a professional, and he could handle all those guys.
Marvin Lewis.
I said Marvin Jones, sorry. Marvin Jones, actually wide receivers going. Marvin Lewis, I mean, he established a culture. But
right.
they still, at the time, were drafting guys that were taking slots lower because they had something off the field or an injury or whatever, and he was able to make it work. They've always been cheap. That's what they are. No, we're frugal. No, you're cheap. And Carson Palmer is a little bit behind this because at some point he was done with it. And I love Carson. He's a friend of mine. We grew up in the same area. And look, there's a lot of reasons that he at some point, when he wants to, can come out with what actually went down and why he retired. But let's also remember, he leaves, they go to the playoffs without him 5 straight years. Okay, so we've had organizations that have been in this despair in the past. The Detroit Lions were the first team to not win a game, and ultimately they turned it around and they've been to the playoffs. Have won a playoff. It's hard to win the playoffs. The Saints before Aaron Brooks got them their first playoff win, but forever they were the Aints.
No, I'm not saying that the Bengals can't turn it around. I'm just saying making the playoffs is nice. But that's not the goal of everyone's goal is not to make the playoffs. Your goal is to win a Super Bowl. And if you're Joe Burrow and you just had the greatest statistical season of any human person that has played that position in the history of the sport,
right.
I don't care about what you did last year. I know everyone wants to see a bigger body of work, but this is what you just did.
Look, I'll say this.
I might say, you know what? Everyone else had the opportunity with other great talents. There's been other great teams, and they did not do what I just did.
Listen, I honestly, if I'm the Bengals, I would consider trading him. Hey, you don't want to play here? Fine, goodbye.
I mean,
and you know what?
He hasn't said that.
I know he has. Well, hold on a second. But this is important. Everybody points out the Eli Manning trade, okay? The Chargers won the trade. Do not kid yourself. The Chargers got Phillip Rivers, who I believe is a better quarterback, but equal. You want to say lesser, fine. They also got Nate Kading, their best kicker, and they got Sean Merriman out of the same deal. That's a win.
I would argue they did not win the trade because Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls and 2 Super Bowl MVPs, beating Tom Brady and the Patriots in the dynasty era.
Okay, but that's so they win more games. In terms of winning the trade, if I give you Eli Manning versus Phillip Rivers, and you want to say Eli Manning's better, okay.
It's not about better. I'm just looking at results. Like, we can literally look at the results of their career, and Eli Manning did the right thing. Not that Phillip Rivers lost, or not that he...
You're not factoring in Sean Merriman and Nate Kading.
They didn't win anything.
My point is... My point is this, okay? And twofold. One, Eli never said a word, ever. Okay, the mistake Joe Burrow's making is he's doing his own dirty work. That's a mistake. Hey, anybody takes me. Cincinnati takes me, awesome. If you don't want to play in Cincinnati ever, then don't say a word. That's what your agent is for. He's the bad guy. That's what happened with Eli Manning. Like, look, when Eli Manning got benched 2 years ago and everybody got fired, Eli Manning never said anything publicly.
Yeah, but that's Eli Manning's personality. They're not the same guy.
Second part is this. If I was the Bengals, if I get a Pirates bounty for Joe Burrow, you can have him because we need more players.
I'm with you. If you can get 3 first-round picks, that's worth it.
The difference is it's the Bengals. They're not trading the pick. They're drafting the home state pick.
There's a lot of speculation about which NFL team will take Tua in April, and he shared his dream scenario for this year's draft.
Have you started thinking about where you could end up or how this could play out?
We've looked at teams, we've talked about teams, we've talked to teams. Somebody might trade up and you could possibly drop or you could possibly go higher. We've been talking about all those scenarios. If you're saying to me, if I could choose what team I want to play on, as far as my favorite team growing up, then I'd probably tell you the Cowboys.
Now, you talked about this earlier. It's what the scenario would be if the Cowboys moved off of Dak Prescott. I am much higher on Dak Prescott than I think maybe anyone in all of the United States of America. Like, I don't.
Well, I mean,
I see Dak's value on him.
Skip's pretty.
Well, yeah. Skip is very high on Dak. I see Dak's value on a more macro level. I don't see an aggressive move from the Cowboys at the quarterback position, so that's why I don't really understand the non-committal nature of these negotiations with Dak. I understand you're going to go from paying him like $400,000 a year to, $35 million contract. It's a big stretch. But when it comes to these contracts, they always move down the ranks. What is perceived as to be this obscene contract, 3 years later ends up being very reasonable. That's why the overreactions to yes, you are going to be tied up with money for a few years, and then it's going to stretch out. Dak is very young. You have to think about the future of your franchise. Are you going to be in a situation where you can take a top draft pick anytime soon? No. So unless you're willing to make some very dramatic trade, which is going to cost you a lot of pieces, what is the plan? You can't be dysfunctional quarterback. So what's the plan? Are you going to pick up Matt Stafford?
Well, I think this year, unlike other years, there are options. There's Mariota, there's Jameis,
But the Cowboys aren't in a win-now scenario. Jameis and Mariota do not solve your problems long term.
Well, no. The reason that it makes sense to sign a quarterback long term is so that you have cost certainty. All the GMs will tell you, well, at least we know how much we're paying for the quarterback. My issue is, of the last 10 years, the quarterback making the most money with the highest cap hit, which is what would happen here, 8 of those 10 years, that team hasn't made the playoffs. Why? Because it takes up too high a percentage of your cap. I don't think it's his fault that Zeke cut in line, but Zeke cutting in line made it so now they only have that one franchise tag, and they haven't gotten his deal done. And I like Dak. He went from being undervalued and underdrafted to being overvalued and overdrafted. And I think trying to find the happy medium in where his contract sits and how you can do it smartly. I understand why Dak wants every penny and feels like he's been underpaid. I get it. But I also understand where Dallas is like, okay, but you're not as good as those guys. And if you're going to use Jared Goff's contract, that's a terrible contract. Why would we copy that? Now, they did it with Ezekiel Elliott's contract. Why would you copy Todd Gurley's contract? It's a terrible contract with Todd Gurley with his bad knee. They did. So maybe the Cowboys learned from the mistakes of the Rams. Maybe they do not. I don't know.
I mean, I would agree with you on Todd Gurley's contract. I wouldn't agree with you on Jared Goff's contract.
You don't think so?
They played in a Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Okay,
when was the last time the Cowboys were in a Super Bowl?
Understood.
I
this
don't know
year,
what everyone else is playing for. And listen, I'm a Dolphins fan, so I have no experience of this. Obviously, I have with the Steelers. But I thought we were all playing for Super Bowls. So if a contract is a bad contract, if you just made it to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, I don't think that's a bad contract.
No, but he made it to the
now,
Super Bowl.
Now, if they never make it again for the next 15 years.
There's 2 different levels to it. One, I agree. I don't think Dak Prescott, everybody talks about what Dak Prescott's achieved. I don't think he's achieved what Jared Goff has achieved. He never played in the Super Bowl.
Right.
This year, when they both had bad years, Jared Goff's team won 9 games in a far better division than the one that Dak Prescott played in.
I'm not arguing that they didn't underachieve this year. The Cowboys should have been much better than they were. But I'm going to look at the bigger body of work and look at the macro level of what it means to have stability at that position.
Understood the stability is important. That's why they kept the same offensive staff. Look, they're going to keep him. They're going to sign him. This is going to get worked out. I just think the idea of we're going to sign him to $1 more than somebody else just because that's the way it always works, I think that's dumb. I think be smart about it. Learn from Tom Brady. Take a little bit less. Spread out over your team.
Tom Brady has a wife that's worth like $300 million.
But he didn't when he first started doing all this.
Yeah, but it's a little unfair to ask someone who's been playing on a 4th-round rookie contract to take a pay cut.
Fair. That's Troy Taylor with news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping.
I kind of feel like the Rockets, and I like so much about some of the things they're doing, but I feel like they're trying to do the impossible. I'll explain why next. I'm Doug Gottlieb. This is The Herd.